Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson, he's here at number 3. In large part due to the upside argument.
Yeah.
I guess, right?
Yeah.
There is not a player on this list who has had a better season than Zion Williamson's 2020-2021 season, where he was an all-star, averaged 27 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shot 61% from the field, and basically dominated like every single moment that he was out there, especially in the back half of that season. Look, I get if you're worried about Zion's body, if you're worried about his frame, if you're worried about like how to build a roster around him, right?
Yep.
He is an unbelievable offensive downhill force at getting rim shots. Like that season in 2020-21, that was like, if you look at any of the studies, like Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem level generating shots at the rim and finishing at the rim efficiency from Zion. Like he was that special at it. This past season, they played him a lot more point guard, right? Like he was more on the ball, and we'll see how that works this year with DeJounte Murray. Like, is that something they go to consistently, right? Like he has to get in shape, but man, the best we have seen from Zion is better than the best we have seen from anybody on this list yet, outside of maybe Anthony Edwards in the playoffs at times. But for a full regular season, Zion at his best has been better than anybody else so far.
Yeah, I mean, the argument and the easy one, and is very warranted and justified, is the injuries, right? If you want to come and say, listen, this guy's not going to be healthy and he's not going to do this and do that, cool. I will not push back against that. And we talked about injuries with other guys. In fairness, like we got to be transparent here. We talked about it with why we had LaMelo in some ways, where we had him and other players as well. But like you said, the upside is just ridiculous. And when he locked in and he's focused and you have the right guys around him, he can be impossible to stay in front of on the offensive end. And I think if he would lock in, on the defensive end, he could do some things on that end as well. And so there's no other way to say it. The upside is so enormous. I didn't have him here initially, but then I'm like, can I really? I just didn't feel like I could put somebody else higher than him when we're talking a little projection, a little bit potential and stuff like that. So it's just, he gets to his left hand and it's over.
If he gets to his left hand, it's really over, especially if he's downhill in any way, shape, or form. He was a monster in this playing game against the Lakers, by the way. Like, this is a good defensive team with the Lakers. Theoretically, has a lot of bodies and matchups that they can throw at him. Have Anthony Davis to be able to come over and help defense all the time. He was the best player on the court in this game. Yeah, he was unequivocally the best player on the court in this game.
Yep. No, that's one of the games I was looking back to, and he was doing everything to keep him in the game. He was awesome. Had an isolation defensive possession versus LeBron, and then got a block, hit a little fadeaway out of a post up, hit a mid-range pull-up jumper. Like, I think that's what unlocks it. If Zion can just hit mid-range jumpers, it would be crazy. And then we talked, listen, J-Dub, we both love. And so, like, irregardless of anything else, but I went back and looked at that one. J-Dub struggled with Zion because he's just so big. And most people struggle because of that. Like, just, we talked about Paolo and his body and ability to get through people. And Zion has that even more so. And it, again, stands out with his free throw attempts. And I think he can pass. And so, he's improved his assist numbers every year he's played, up to 5 assists this year. So that would really unlock things even more if he can really do that at a high level while keeping the turnovers down.
Yeah, like what I would love to see is them really lean into point Zion.
I agree.
Unfortunately, I don't know that they're going to do that.
Sure.
With DeJounte Murray being there now.
Yeah.
I felt like point Zion was the way to go. I felt like they really unlocked a lot with that last season. And look, I just don't think that it's hard because the Pelicans front office has done a lot really, really well, right? Drafting Herb Jones, drafting Trey Murphy, um, you know, figuring out how to make Zion work in some way, shape, or form. Uh, Obviously, they kind of handed over the organization to Zion on some level, and that didn't work out super, super well early on. But like, to me, I worry about where this organization is kind of heading from a
That's fair.
building around Zion,
That's fair.
kind of situation. I would have moved Brandon Ingram. I would have moved, like I feel like I would have just done things so differently. And I don't know that,
Would you have
you know,
acquired a center, Sam? Would you have acquired a center if you were the Pelicans?
yes, I would have drafted,
Starting level center
I would have drafted Yves Missy and acquired a starting center as
that
well.
maybe
Because
could
I think
space
Yves
the
is gonna
floor
be,
in some capacity. That would be nice next to Zion.
that's honestly a reason against drafting Yves Missy because I don't think Yves is ever going to do that. So, yeah, look, I understand that their idea is like, let's just get talent and, let Willie Green figure it out.
Sure.
But I think that they really need a big who can space the floor in order to actualize what Zion is capable of. Maybe they'll figure it out at some point. Maybe they won't. Who knows? Maybe Zion's second stop will be his best stop. I don't know. Right. Maybe they can figure out a way to make this work. But I do know that Zion at his best, and we have seen his best at this point, because we saw it in 2020, 2021, and we saw it in the second half this year, where like Zion for the second half of this season, like, I don't know if you remember this. You and I did a show where we talked about being worried about Zion. Like, we were genuinely talking like, oh my God, like, are we sure this is ever going to happen?
Sure.
And then over his last 47 games, he was 23, 6 and 5 and, went 57, 36, 73 and looked great. And then, when they moved him to point guard, like more consistently, it felt like that went even better. Right. So he's one of the hardest evaluations in the league.
Yeah.
There's not a denial. Like, you can't deny this. Zion Williamson is one of the hardest evaluations in the league. If he hits his ceiling again, his ceiling is higher than all but the two guys that we have ahead of him.
Yep.
I
think so too.
The floor is probably lower than all of the guys we've talked about today.
I mean, because he is one of the harder archetypes to build around, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I struggled with where to rank that on this list. And ultimately I did go with the upside because I think that he can be the best player on a title team if you build the right roster around him.
That's where it would be like interesting if we would have, I was thinking about this yesterday, if we would have said, hey, we're doing this from a draft perspective. Like, what if we just would have said, we're drafting a team? Who would you take? Because then you value guys that are number ones a little bit more than you value role players, right? Or certain archetypes versus other archetypes. And you take out some of the other nuance that we're talking about. So that's why I think there's different ways to wrap your head around these things. And, but I think like you've said it best, whenever you talk about just some of the best ceiling season we've seen, it's hard to argue he hasn't had that above anybody else other than the next guy we're about to talk about. And then the number one guy, the best kept secret, worst kept secret. We all know the situation there.